Tonight, two states hold their breath, awaiting the first cyclone in half a century to strike Queensland's southeast and northern New South Wales, putting millions of Aussies in harm's way. Cyclone Alfred inching closer to making landfall as residents scramble to protect themselves. Days have turned to hours. Cyclone Alfred bearing down on Queensland's southeast coast.
The sense of unknown. We don't really know what this is going to be like.
Fingers crossed that the roof stays on and the windows don't leak too much.
The Category 2 storm slowing down today, sparking fears it could generate more power.
It's told us that it's going to be late, but linger even longer. A bit like a completely unwanted house guest.
Alfred now forecast to make landfall between Coolangatta and Noosa early Saturday morning, expected to lash Brisbane for 12 hours.
Scared about the storm that's going to happen tomorrow.
Got all food and batteries and torch all set up.
Residents in low-lying flood-prone areas today urged to evacuate.
There are 24 areas or communities that are subject at the moment to a prepare to evacuate order.
Winds at the centre of the cyclone are already hitting speeds of 95 kilometres per hour, with gusts of up to 130. As monster waves smash Gold Coast beaches, taking onlookers by surprise.
What the? Ah! Foolish!
Footage taken at Currumbin Beach capturing the water rising up to lash the roads, with record waves of 16.5 metres recorded this morning.
Storm surge is unlike anything I've seen before.
It's pretty crazy. Never seen anything like it in my life, to be honest.
Hundreds of schools in New South Wales and more than 1,000 in Queensland have closed. 3 regional airports have shut and public transport has been halted.
I have every faith in the capability of our team to respond, and I know how great Queenslanders are at recovering after events.
Thousands of homes across both states already without power. Residents in the firing line flocking to stock up on supplies and sandbag their properties before it's too late.
We are currently seeing the power of Brisbane coming together and supporting one another.
Do what we can now and see everyone on the other side.
We are live from the land of the Kulin Nations, and joining us now from Brisbane is Queensland Premier David Crisafulli. Premier, thank you very much for fitting us in. Is the community ready for Alfred?
People have responded brilliantly. It's been great to see, and I just want Queenslanders to know that if we continue to do the things that we're doing now, it just makes the response and then the recovery so much better. So people have had that little bit of a longer window because the system it stalled overnight and looped around. It remained a Category 2, but that bought us a little more time. And I want people to know that we are prepared. We've really spent a lot of time pre-positioning things, everything from generators to nurses to electricity workers, and people have done their bit as well. So I'm confident that the state will be able to handle it, and I'm confident in the ability of Queenslanders to see this through.
It's good to hear that the preparations are going well. What's the latest advice that you're giving to residents to keep safe?
That in some way, shape or form, everyone is going to have some level of impact, whether it's the wind or the waves, whether it's rainfall or flooding, there'll be some impact for everyone in some way. And it's so important that you do the little things up front. Now, the system has taken its time to get here, but we've seen waves north of 12 metres off the Gold Coast. That's uncharted territory. Moments ago, we had a reading of about 100 kilometres off one of the islands. So, look, the system is coming in. Again, it's the little things that people do, and we've just continued to say, stay connected. We've put all of that information on the disaster.qld.gov website, and by doing that, we've worked with the councils to show things like the mapping, whether or not people are in a storm surge area, whether or not you might be subject to flooding. And if you're not, we just give tips of what to do. And the best thing you can do is fortify your home, remove the loose items. That's the safest place for you. And I've got every confidence in people.
There are already thousands of homes without power. 20,000 in Brisbane alone are at risk of flooding. Just how much damage are we expecting to see by the end of this?
Well, that depends on when it crosses, exactly where and how strong it is. But one thing's for sure, and that is we're ready. And you mentioned electricity. That is such a key part of any response, getting that back on. We've now got 1,200 electricity workers here. Many of them have actually been reconnecting power. We lost power to several thousand homes across a range of suburbs, particularly in the northern Gold Coast and some of those islands where trees have fallen. A lot of those were reconnected. But you're right, there'll be more power loss. But we've got those workers. They will work while it's continuing, while it's safe to do so. And then once the system passes, they will be there, boots and all. And there's another 800 from the other end of the state who'll be going to help their mates in the south after seeing people from Brisbane come and help them only a few weeks ago. It's a magnificent thing to see. It is Queensland spirit at its best.
Premier, just quickly before we let you go, obviously weather is uncertain. We expect that the worst of it will hit on Saturday morning. What will be the top priorities in terms of preparation for tomorrow?
Just to make sure that people continue to do their little things to get themselves ready, and we will continue to make sure that all our systems are in place. We've got swift water rescue boats in place. We've got health staff in place. We've spent a lot of time preparing for this because we have taken it seriously, and overwhelmingly so too of Queenslanders. So I've got every faith we'll keep sharing the information regularly, and people will continue to respond in the way they have. We're pleased with where we are at the moment, and I'm very, very confident we'll see this through.
Let's hope so. All the best, Premier. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Brendan Smith joins us live from Currumbin on the Gold Coast. Brendan, we're seeing some pretty wild scenes and treacherous waves there in that footage and where you are. What's the situation right now?
Well, the rain is setting in, the wind is picking up, and as Georgie was saying, that erosion is simply getting worse. That sandhill is about 2.5 metres high, and it continues to wash away hour by hour. Those massive surges of water as well just gushed through here. They swallowed up the car park multiple times today. There were at least 20 surges that I saw. I've been here since about 11 o'clock this morning, and the sheer force of those surges tips people over, it pushes them into the sandbanks. We saw yesterday, just further down the beach from where I am, a woman in her 70s was out taking photos, and she was hit by one of those surges and then washed onto rocks where she hit her head. She was taken to Gold Coast University Hospital in a stable condition. Thankfully, no reports of major injuries here today, but we've seen people really risking it with these massive waves crashing onto the beach here. We've seen surfers being dragged out by jet skis to try and catch that final wave. They really are not heeding those warnings from Surf Life Saving Queensland, just saying get away from the beaches and stay inside.
Well, it must be bizarre for them to see the landscape changing before their eyes. And what else have you heard from the locals? Do they feel ready?
Well, look, you look along the esplanade here, there's many homes that they're taped up. There's plenty of sandbags at front doors, front gates and garages. But as I said, there are plenty of people who are not taking it seriously. It's pretty much probably that laid-back Queensland way of life. People are saying, oh, you know, the storm will simply pass. We've seen things like that before. But we know that Cyclone Alfred, once it does make landfall on early Saturday morning, it will be that Category 2 the modelling is showing right now, which will see massive winds, destructive winds and plenty of rain. We saw today, just further from where I am, on the Gold Coast Seaway, winds of 80 kilometres an hour. But once Alfred reaches landfall, those winds will double to 150, 160 kilometres an hour. So that will bring down power lines, that will bring down trees as well.
It's extraordinary. Brendan, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Most of us, as we've just been talking about, have never lived through a storm of this magnitude. And for many in southeast Queensland, this is going to be their first experience with an intense tropical cyclone. So what does it actually feel like?
The sounds can be quite eerie. You can hear a lot of banging, a lot of crashing, a lot of howling. So that can be quite daunting and quite scary for some people.
First-hand accounts from those who have experienced cyclones paint a terrifying picture. The deafening sound of winds loud as a jet engine, air pressure so intense it's hard to breathe, horizontal rain and gales with the force to lay waste to a city.
Normally I'm out there chasing the storms, but But this one, I'm now the one getting chased. This one's come into my home as well as many others across southeast Queensland.
Cyclone Alfred is now expected to make landfall in the early hours of Saturday morning. For those in the firing line, here's what to expect.
Within that 12-hour time frame of Alfred making landfall, we're expecting those damaging and destructive winds to become a little more widespread across southeast Queensland. Once winds get to about 90 kilometres an hour, bridges will start to be closed.
Within 6 hours, it will be clear where the storm will make landfall.
About 6 hours out from Alfred's landfall, we're probably looking at wind speeds topping up at about 120 to 135 kilometres an hour, and then between 90 and 120 kilometres an hour extending inland from the coast.
Then, the moment of impact.
It's going to be this weird feeling for those people that are going through the eye. There'll be the really crazy winds to start with, and then once the eye moves over, there's going to be this really strange calming sensation. And then once the backside of the eye comes over them, there is an expectation that the winds will increase quite quickly once again.
That level of intensity expected to linger over Brisbane for 12 hours, dumping a possible 800 mils of rain with wind gusts of up to 164 k's, strong enough to down trees and power lines, destroy boats and damage houses. About 30,000 homes across Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast are at risk of flooding.
There was some concern yesterday that may further develop into a Category 3. The chances of that have reduced.
But how much damage Tropical Cyclone Alfred inflicts depends on more than just its Category 2 grading. Its slow movement will see a more sustained, intense rain on the areas below.
As it approaches the coast, that slow movement is a concern in terms of the rainfall and the potential flooding from that.
Being in a tropical cyclone in southeast Queensland, it hasn't happened in 50 years, and we're kind of just rolling with the punches at the moment.
Well, Yetta Gurtner is the coordinator of James Cook University's Centre for Disaster Studies and has personally lived through at least 5 cyclones. Yetta, thanks for being with us. Just what is it like to be in the centre of a cyclone?
In the centre of the cyclone, it depends on what you're actually referring to the centre. Obviously, the wind's coming from the one direction, and as we've just heard, that eerie calm in the middle of the cyclone. And that's quite deceptive because people want to go outside, they want to check the damage of their house, but there can be those wind gusts unexpectedly that come up, and they can be quite dangerous. So it's really about a matter of staying calm and knowing there's going to be wind coming from the opposite direction that can be just as dangerous, if not more so.
Wow.
For people who've never dealt with a cyclone before, what are some practical things that they can do right now to prepare?
Well, fortunately, we've got another day. So it's really doing those last minute preparations, making sure that anything that's loose outside is taken inside, tying down things that you can't take inside, making sure you've got sufficient food and water. And we're now recommending 5 to 7 days of food and water for everyone in your house, and food that they're going to eat. We're not sure when supply chains will be open or whether you're going to be able to get out of your house. Make sure you've got a backup battery for your phone. Make sure you've got an AM, FM radio, because telecommunications can actually also go down. So expect the worst and be prepared for it, and then you should be covered for all contingencies.
And what about in terms of their insurance? Are there things they can do to make sure that those claims go through?
So every insurance company is highly variable, so we recommend calling your insurer before you dispose of everything. They can require photos or inventory, so having all your important documents either photocopied or in a waterproof document wallet, because they'll ask you what your policy number is, and the quicker you can provide that, the easier you can get your claim to go through. But don't throw anything out without confirming with them first.
What are the biggest mistakes people make?
There's a lot of kind of myths that go around about taping windows and opening up at the leeward side of your house. Modern houses are built to be relatively resilient. Obviously, we don't have the same cyclone standards down on the southeast Queensland as we do north of Rockhampton. However, we do recommend when the cyclone's going, just stay in the safest room of your house. Don't get up to move windows and open doors or do anything. Just stay in the safest room of your house so you avoid slipping on water or broken glass or anything like that.
Thanks for the advice, Yetta. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now, we saw earlier the incredible scenes from the storm surge, and Steve Smith is the Commissioner for the Queensland Fire Department, which also covers floodwater rescue. Steve, we've seen some crazy footage, and we have also seen, unfortunately, people clearly not taking heed of the warning seriously that they should stay away from the water. Just how frustrating is that?
Oh, look, any time that people don't heed advice from the authorities becomes pretty frustrating. And look, it's, people see it as a bit of harmful fun, a bit of play, but what can happen quite quickly is that turns to tragedy, and that's tragedy for the individual involved, but also their family and friends, and it ties up resources, exposes our people to extreme risk, and we just want people to contemplate that they're operating in a large-scale disaster event, so it's not an isolated operation. And resources need to be in place for those unavoidable sort of emergencies that we respond to.
So when Alfred hits, huge flooding is expected. I think some people might be surprised to see us talking to the fire brigade about this. What is it that your teams are doing to prepare for that?
Yes, we've done a huge amount of preparation for the approach of TC Alfred, and that includes our specialist swiftwater rescue firefighters deployed across the impact area in order to make sure that we've got a response network able to be timely across that impact areas. So they're very specially trained, they're very aware of that operating environment, and they're positioned in order to respond to community needs.
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate your time. We'll let you get back to some very important work.
Thank you.